think it's going to change lives. And we just had Is It by Imani and various artists there. So, Mr. Paul Du Toit, welcome to African Diaries.
Nmbuso Mahlangu, thank you very much
Absolutely.
indeed.
Yeah. I mean, let's just talk about, let's start it off with you as an individual,
Yes.
as an author. Um, let's just get a brief background of who you are and how you got to, writing books and all of that.
Okay, well, the short version is I started off by playing guitar in pubs and restaurants.
Ooh.
I went on to sell life insurance. I became a branch manager.
Mm-hmm.
I then decided that my real future was in training and development. So I started a training company called Congruence Training. And it was then that I morphed into being a professional speaker. So I'm actually Africa's first certified speaking professional this century. I got mine in 2008. And it was round about then that I published my first business book, and this is my third one. So
Wow.
the other two are on speaking.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this one is titled The Book of Persuasion.
Yes.
And we're just talking off air that the right place to start or to begin is by defining what persuasion is.
Okay. So the subtitle is How You Can Change People's Minds and Influence Their Decisions While Building Trust.
Yeah.
And it implies that we're looking at the positive side of persuasion, as opposed to manipulation or coercion.
Yeah.
So coercion is really where you force somebody to do something. So you're not actually changing their minds. You're just forcing them to do something or to think something different from what they thought before. Whereas manipulation might be a trickery, or even a child screaming until you give them a sweet and then they stop because you gave them a sweet. That's
Yeah.
also manipulation, but it's not, it's not with any evil intent. It's quite simply because they want to get their way. Now, persuasion is a very refined skill because you're using your communication skills. You're also using skills such as patience. In other words, instead of just going in and saying the first thing that comes into your head, you're thinking carefully about how you're setting up the discussion so that you get the outcome that you're looking for.
Yeah.
That's really the key to persuasion. So it's changing people's minds so that they comply willingly.
And okay, so I mean, it goes with it. It ties in with a whole lot of things. I'm already thinking hypnosis. I'm already thinking, like you said, manipulation.
Yeah.
So if you are trying to get people to, like you said, the subtitle is How You Can Change People's Lives or Minds, rather,
Yeah.
and influence their decisions while building trust.
Yeah.
Is this you trying to get your way?
Well, yes, I think to a large extent it is,
Yeah.
because every time we communicate, we're either responding to something that somebody else has said, or we're trying to get them to do something.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't just communicate because we have nothing better to do. Look, sometimes we might just be having fun. But the crux of communication is to get the outcomes that you're looking for. Now, for that, you need some skills. Luckily, we've got a lot of those skills already naturally built into us.
Yeah.
Babies are fantastic persuaders. They want, they're hungry,
Yeah.
they cry. They've wet their nappy, they cry. And then they get a response. And when they get a response, they calm down. So we are born with those skills inherently in us, but they often get programmed out of us as we get older, and we get all sorts of funny ideas about it being bad to persuade and what have you.
Yeah.
Whereas we should be developing those skills, and they involve certain techniques, they involve communication skills, they involve body language, they involve using your voice effectively.
Yeah. And let's talk about that in relationships, in personal relationships.
Yes.
Because as you mentioned that your first book was in business, and I can imagine this works quite well also in business, the skill of communication and persuasion. But in personal relationships, I find that we struggle so much, whether it's a personal relationship with a colleague, an acquaintance, or my favorite subject, in romantic relationships.
Yes.
How do we get that across without really trying to take it to that level of saying I'm gonna cry about everything, as you've been making an example of a baby?
Okay, so The big thing about relationships is that, firstly, when we're talking about our relationship with our partner,
Yes.
we tend to get into almost psychological rackets. So if there's an argument, for instance, the argument usually goes in the same direction and it has the same outcome, and people react the same. And the reason for that is that because we are communicating via emotions.
Ooh.
So if we take the emotion out of it and we actually listen to what they're saying and we try and change the way we respond, we very often get a different outcome.
Hold on, before you continue. Are you saying persuasion is not an emotional skill?
Well, actually, it's detached from emotion because the problem is that we allow our responses, our emotional responses, to dictate what we say. And if we took a step back, firstly paused before and thought before we opened our mouth and had a different response.
Yeah.
You see, you can't. We'd love to be able to change other people and make them perfect, but you're not going to. So the best way that you can alter the interaction is to change the way you respond to something that you may not have liked. And that's, in essence, what one needs to do.
Yeah. And I think it also speaks to, I'm going to get to all the parts of your book, as it's, I believe it's 6 parts, right?
Yeah.
To it. I know, I'm just going to make it personal so that it makes sense to me, and I leave the room today knowing exactly how to be, persuasive in a gentle way. I get an email, and whether be it's my partner or whether be it's my friend, and the subject is quite bold.
Yes.
Do I then now, with the skill that you are teaching on this book, do I then allow someone else to read it for me? Or, because obviously I'm going to be emotional. Let's say the subject is, you are not treating me right, right, in bold letters. How do I detach emotionally and still be able to respond to that person without rushing to AI to say,
Okay.
Chat, please respond for me?
Yeah, so that's a great question. What we have to be careful of, and I luckily picked this up a long time ago, is that we've got to be careful of getting into email wars. In communication, I'm finding that people all too often don't want to face one another and have a discussion. So they try and conduct a negotiation. They maybe send an angry email without thinking about it, which they might regret. Instead of just maybe picking up the phone and talking to that person, and if it's an angry headline which says you're treating me badly or something, your first question is, I'm sorry to hear that. What makes you say that, or why do you feel that way? And let them express what they need to express, because there's a law about persuasion. If you try and push somebody, they're going to push you back. But if you hold out your hand and gently withdraw your hand towards yourself, they're going to come towards you, which is ultimately what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So you want to persuade and not force.
Oh.
And that's really the idea.
Yeah.
But it takes skill.
Yeah.
And we need to be conscious of the skills that we're using. And there's plenty of them. I've got over 50 in the book. When I do my keynote talk on it, I can't obviously cover 50 persuasion techniques in 45 minutes.
Yeah.
But I can pretty much cover 6 or 7. And then I encourage people to take the book, because then you can re-look at what I've covered and then get a whole lot of bonus tips as well.
And with your research, have you seen that persuasion works better in person, or you can still do it via an online platform and still be heard and seen in the same light of persuading someone?
I am finding, and I'm quite adamant about this, I'll go back to the fact that we're hiding behind email, we're hiding behind WhatsApps. Communication is worsening because we're becoming afraid of speaking to people on the phone or online. Even when we go online, we're switching off our video. Now, that is taking away a vital element of communication, which is our body language.
Yeah.
For instance, one of the most compelling, persuasive techniques is to smile at somebody.
Yeah.
Just to have a happy face, make eye contact with them, use gestures. You're probably looking at me right now and watching me make these gestures and thinking, hope he doesn't smack the microphone. But the point is, when we talk, we gesture. That's a natural way of doing things.
Yeah.
So by hiding behind our thumbs, texting and what have you, we're losing that vital component. So if you want to get something done quickly and you want to answer a few questions, have a discussion. You can sort it out in 2 minutes on the phone. The email volley can take a few days. And if it goes wrong, well, then it can be quite problematic.
And how do you fail when you're trying to persuade someone? How do you lose?
Okay, so I think one must understand something, that all the persuasion techniques, these are not really manipulative tricks.
Yeah.
They are techniques to maximize your chances of getting the outcome that you want. So there's no persuasion technique that is really a silver bullet, which means you're not going to succeed every time. It's a bit like a general election. There are certain people that will vote for the left party from the time they started voting till the time they die. And there's some people that will vote for the right party. Those are not the people you're going to move because they always vote for the same party. It's the people in the middle. So let's say as a salesperson, you've got a success rate every out of 10 presentations that you deliver, you're normally successful 3 times out of 10.
Yeah.
If you hone your perception skills, your persuasion skills, you can increase that to 4, 5, 6, or 7 out of 10 presentations. And now you're actually using your skills effectively. But you're never going to be 100% successful. So the expectation of always winning is completely unrealistic. When you look at a football team that wins the league, they usually lose a few games.
Yeah.
They can't win all of them. You can't field your best side every time. And we're human. We have emotions. We have times of the month and times of the year and times that we're tired. In fact, the discussion, in a sense, that we should be having is that we have this incredible thing between our ears called a brain. Now, that brain is the same hardware that they had in the Stone Age.
Yeah.
But whereas then they really concerned themselves with water, food, shelter, procreation, and community, now there are so many other things that we have to consider. And the real turning point came about 70,000 years ago during the cognitive revolution, when Homo sapiens, and by the way Neanderthals as well, started to harness language in a more complex way. That has resulted in us becoming the dominant factor on the planet. Now, the interesting thing is that complex language that we have the same genes in us that chimpanzees have, but it's called the FOXP2 gene.
Yeah.
But our gene differs from the chimpanzee by just 2 amino acids, and that gives us the ability to be able to communicate in a complex way. And that's what's helped us to become masters of the planet. If you think that 70,000 years ago the human population had reduced to possibly 10,000 people, and now we're cruising on towards 9 million.
Sure.
Which we're expected to reach in 2037. So this human brain that we've got, it's amazing, because it's only 2% of our body weight, but it consumes 20% of the oxygen that the body uses.
Sure.
And because of that, we need to protect the amount of finite energy that we have in any particular day. I don't know if you've sometimes got to 6 o'clock in the evening and you're totally spent. You've just got nothing left.
Yeah.
That's because you've used it all up.
Shucks.
And also maybe because you didn't have a decent night's sleep the night before.
Yeah.
And maybe your nutrition, you were eating junk food or something like that. That's going to make you get tired a lot earlier. So what we do is that when we respond to people, we use things called heuristics. And what heuristics are is that they're mental shortcuts. So we labor under the illusion that when somebody gives us an answer, they've thought carefully about it.
Ooh.
They haven't thought carefully about it. They're just saying the first thing that comes into their head based on the shortcuts.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a quick example of shortcuts. You walking along like a path in the bush, and a snake comes across your path. Okay. Now you've been programmed to be scared of snakes. But let's say you were an expert on snakes, and you'd see the pattern of that snake and you realize the snake is totally harmless. If I picked it up, it wouldn't do anything to me. But our reaction is, that's a snake, it must be dangerous. We see a tall chap walking down the street, that looks like R.G. Strydom, the South African lock forward, and we think, oh, he must be a lock forward.
Yeah.
But he's probably from Denmark and has never heard of rugby. He likes chess or something. You go to a store and you've got tomato sauce on the list. Which one are you going to pick up? All gold.
Of course.
Because your mother always picked up all gold. I don't know how they sell any other brands. So those are the shortcut heuristics that we use.
Yeah.
And this is why we need to realize when somebody gives us an answer, like a no is not necessarily a no. We need to find out the reason behind the no in order to decipher whether we back off for a while and try a different strategy, or come back at them immediately and say, have you possibly thought of that?
Yeah.
And words are one of our most powerful tools.
And I love what you're saying, and that is the voice of Paul Du Toit, speaker and author of the Book of Persuasion. Let's dive into... Okay, we've just spoken about techniques. I'm just going through the parts of the book. We've just spoken, actually, maybe let me just rather ask you this. Which is the most important? I know it's probably in a chronological order, but which is the most important to try and grasp and learn between the 6 parts that you've got? I see you've got the first one, it's obviously persuasion and context. Second part is the tools of persuasion, which I find quite interesting with the subtitles there. And then the third part is persuasion devices. Maybe let's get into those.
Okay. So there's quite a few here. I mean, one of them that's quite interesting is if you're trying things in a certain way and you're not getting the outcome that you want, maybe you should change the order. Now, I learned that by accident. So my daughter was 3 years old. She was actually 2 years old when I got divorced. We had quite an amicable arrangement. Instead of every second weekend, I had my child twice a week.
Ooh.
So I had her on a Tuesday and a Friday, which meant that I gave her back to her mom on a Wednesday, or I took her to school on a Wednesday and her mom would fetch her, or I'd get it back on a Saturday. Now, I was having a problem in as much as I would wake her up, I'd take her for breakfast, but my daughter was a slow eater. So the breakfast would drag and drag and drag. Then it was becoming time to leave, and I still had to get her dressed, and then it became a bit of a war. So after about 2 or 3 months of this, I was chatting to my former wife, and I said to her, do you have the same kind of war every morning trying to get her ready? She says, no, smooth as clockwork.
Oh.
No problems at all. I said, well, how do you do it? She says, well, what are you doing? And I told her the order.
Yeah.
She says, no. She says, I get her up. I get her dressed first. Then we have breakfast. And if she isn't finished her breakfast, she just takes it with her in the car.
Oh.
So I changed the order, and it worked. Order was restored to my home.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's such a simple technique. And you can use that in this way as well. Let's say you've invited some people around, just your partner and yourself and this other couple, and they've come around, and then your 20-year-old daughter pitches up with her fiance or her boyfriend or something and says, it smells wonderful. What's for supper? Now, you've only prepared for 4 people, but now you've got 6 people to feed. So instead of making a fuss and sending them away for takeaways, if you were going to serve some sweet muscadelle at the end of the meal, which closes the palate, instead you just shift it to the beginning of the meal. You give everyone a little glass of sweet muscadelle. That closes the palate, and the food that you prepared for 4 people will now stretch to 6, and everyone will be satisfied. It's just a technique of changing the order. So that's the one. There are plenty there.
Yeah, I think see the one asking for help as well.
Well, asking for help is something that we're not necessarily so good at doing unless we've learned to do it. I think one of the things we need to appreciate is that a lot of our behavior we learn from mirroring or mimicking. We are little mimics, so we mimic our parents and our teachers and our best friends and what have you. So if we were laughed at when we were young, when we asked for help or didn't understand something, then we become discouraged to ask for help. So one of the big advantages of asking for help is that if I ask you for help, I'm showing that I respect your opinion, for instance.
Yeah.
You will also feel flattered that I've asked you for help.
Yeah.
And it'll encourage you when you need help to come to me, which means that I've foisted some kind of bond between the two of us.
Yeah.
I used to think it was a weakness, but it's not a weakness. It's actually a strength to go and ask somebody for help.
Yeah.
So that's just another great example of being persuasive.
And also, I mean, we're talking about asking for help, but I also want to ask about accepting failure.
Yes.
Does that now dismiss that you are less persuasive, or does that say probably this is not for you, or this is not, I don't even want to say technique, because there's also that line where we can try and persuade as much as we can.
Yeah.
But like you were saying about your daughter and you and your ex-wife, that this worked for her, and you asked for help, and she assisted you. But sometimes, what if then you fail in that? Like your daughter's like, no, daddy, I don't want to, take my food I just want to finish and sit on the table with you. How do we then put that in the whole equation of persuasion?
Well, firstly, I had to swallow my pride.
Ooh.
When I was asking my wife for a bit of advice.
Yeah.
And secondly, I think we need to understand that persuasive techniques won't work all the time. As I mentioned, they're not a silver bullet.
Yeah.
One of the things we need with persuasion sometimes is patience. If it doesn't work one way, then maybe try it another way and just wait a little bit. For instance, if a salesperson is going after a particular sale, and the person is saying no to them, it's not necessarily no forever, it's just no for now.
Yeah.
If circumstances change, like a car salesman, for instance, he wants to get another sale from a particular person that bought a car from him. So he thinks, well, I don't want to kind of go after this person too soon but you don't know the circumstances. Now, what happens if his son has just turned 21, 3 months after he's just bought a new car? Now, he might want to buy his son a car as well.
Yeah.
So just because he only just bought a car 3 months ago doesn't mean that he won't be interested now. So it's about the questions that you ask, and it's about your listening skills, which is another whole dimension of persuasion that is really important. So one needs to be asking the right questions. One needs to find out as much as possible about the person that you're speaking to. And the more information you've got, the more you're equipped to persuade.
Yeah. And as I've said, that I am sitting right here with Mr. Paul Du Toit, who's a professional speaker and author. And I've got so many questions that I honestly, I think I actually need a session. I feel like authors are somewhat psychologists, where we need to always go in and consult with them, because they've got so much insights on the things they speak on, of course, because they've researched it well, they've lived through lived experiences. But now let's go to part 6, which is talking about using senses to persuade. Unless if you wanted to go to the one before, so that we get to the part 6.
Okay. So body language is a hugely important and powerful method to persuade, because when we look at somebody and we smile, we can actually show warmth. We can use our voice effectively. We can use our gestures to describe what we're saying.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I teach is presentation skills, and I produce evidence of how important it is from a visual point of view to be doing the right things and not to be making fidgety little gestures. In other words, your gestures need to mean something.
Yeah.
As an example, you can't just flap your hand if you said we traveled a long way. You need to extend your hand right out to say we went a long way, because the extended hand is a long way, rather than just saying we went a long way.
Ooh.
So we know hundreds of gestures, and we use those gestures to persuade. And all you need to do is to go to a Spur restaurant at 6:15 on a Friday evening and just watch the families and watch them having a discussion, and the mom telling a story or the son telling it or whatever. It's amazing how people just automatically use gestures. But if they stand up in front of an audience or someone that they're intimidated by, they stop using gestures. And of course, that helps you to persuade. So gestures is one thing. The power of your voice is incredibly important. And to me, possibly the most powerful of all is just that ability to listen. We refer to it as engaged listening, rather than the psychological term active listening. But it's to really be engaged with someone, like the two of us are now engaging one another. You're doing things like you're going, you are acknowledging what I'm saying with sounds, which shows me that you're listening to what I'm saying in an engaged manner. And what we need to try and avoid is waiting for the person to finish speaking so that we can say what we've prepared, instead of acknowledging what they have said or trying to understand it. So listening is a hugely important part, because when people feel heard, they like you more.
Yeah.
When they like you more, you invoke something called the friendship key.
Oh.
And we prefer to take advice from people that we like rather than people that we don't like.
And I'm seeing number 5 under part 6. It's speaking.
Yes.
Right. And you were speaking about now engaged listening.
Yeah.
So you are speaking to me.
Yes.
And I am listening to you.
Yeah.
Does it fairly assist the persuasion technique when you are saying something and I acknowledge it and I don't have an answer, or I choose not to elaborate, or like you were saying, active listening, preparing an answer, where you are speaking, I'm listening, and I'm like, okay, thank you so much, that was very helpful. Does that also give that
gives me a signal that maybe you weren't listening properly? If you just say it was helpful, if you actually acknowledged it and asked a question about what I've just said, that would of course be more useful.
Yes.
But then if one starts getting into an argument with somebody, there's actually a bit in the book where we're talking about arguing need not necessarily be bad, because the whole idea is if someone comes up with a contrary point of view, we don't necessarily like it, but it's a good idea to hear their contrary point of view, because it allows you to know what you need to do to sway them in the direction that you want them to go.
Yeah.
So arguing need not necessarily be emotional, but what tends to happen is that when someone's arguing with us, we get emotional with them, and then we start raising our voices, and then that's already a red flag.
Yeah.
So we need to learn to argue in a way that is non-confrontational, and we can even end up saying, well, clearly we have a different point of view on this, but I'm really glad we engaged in it, because now I understand a bit more about where you're coming from, and I can be sensitive about how you feel.
Yeah.
And believe me, people differ vastly on what they think on about a whole lot of different topics. So we need to be able to appreciate that you can still be a friend with someone. I mean, family members often have completely divergent points of view in terms of politics, religion, all sorts of things, but you still love them because they're still a person in your family. You may not necessarily agree with them, but you can still love them. You can be friends with someone that doesn't have the same views as you. It's legitimate.
Yeah. Wrapping up, Paul, how do we as individuals make sure that we win? Because I think we all need help. It's not something that, yes, it is inherent, but I don't think it's something that you really literally know how to maneuver. How do we get assisted as, I've got TikTok followers that are on and they're trying to ask questions.
Yeah.
And how do we now make sure that we master the power of persuasion?
So I think the thing to do is to study it a bit. So my short answer is to get yourself some books on persuasion. There's some really good ones out there, Persuasion, Influence, to study up on it, to possibly read a few stories, because stories are really engaging. If somebody tells a story to illustrate something, so read a few stories on the various techniques that one can employ, and then just understand you're not always going to win. Sometimes you won't get it right, and just accept that.
Yeah.
And that's a learning opportunity to possibly try a different angle, like maybe changing the order.
Yeah. And as your parting shot, in closing, what would you say has been the golden lesson in writing this book?
So the thing that really fascinated me was the whole concept of reciprocity.
Which is?
So what it means is that if I give you something, let's say, for instance, you're short of money and you need to borrow 100 Rand from me, and it's the 22nd of the month, and I know you're getting paid on the 26th. So I give you the 100 rand, but now, you don't pay it back on the 26th or the 27th. I have to go and ask you for it. And eventually, grudgingly, you give me my 100 rand back. Now, the point is, you've repaid the debt, but actually it's not fully repaid because I had to ask you for it, which isn't very cool. So now there's a bit of distance between us, because a bit of uneasiness because of this interaction. So what you do is what I lent you the money. So what I do this time is that I come to you about a week later. I say, look, I left my wallet at home. Can you lend me $50? And you say, yeah, sure. You give me $50. I put it in my drawer. Next day, I just give it back to you. I say, thanks very much. You helped me out. I didn't need it, but I just want to level the playing field so you don't feel now kind of indebted to me. Because when somebody does something for you or gives you something, that debt is logged. And we need to understand that we only had currency as exchange around about 625 BC. Before that, it was barter. That was how we exchanged things. So we all did services for our little communities, and in return, people did other things. So we are still wired. We're still hardwired to understand reciprocity from a point of view of give and take, and it's a part of our psyche. So that was a huge thing to me, and I've incorporated that in the book as well.
Okay. And where can we find you on your social media platforms, or if people want to engage with you?
So Twitter, it's Paul Du Toit, and my YouTube, which has got, I think it's now got 207 videos on it. That's Paul Du Toit 1. So it's youtube.com/Paul Du Toit 1. My website is pauldutoit.co.za or pauldutoit.net. So I managed to get in before all the other Paul Du Toits did. And so that's really how you get hold of me.
So you definitely persuaded the system, the internet. And
yes, quite quickly. The other interesting thing we did was in 2001, I found out that presentationskills.coza was not taken. So I grabbed it, and now it's a beautiful portal where I sell my other 2 books and where we advertise our presentation skills courses and what have you. And I must say that those have been going very well.
Absolutely amazing, Paul. Thank you so much for joining us. And that is the voice of Paul Du Toit. Is it pronounced Paul Du Toit? Am I correct in saying Paul Du Toit?
I'll tell you very quickly. Yeah. So the correct pronunciation, it's French. See? So it's Du Toit. But the Afrikaners say De Toit.
Okay.
And the English-speaking people say Du Toit.
Oh.
But actually, I think the Zulu and Xhosa people, they like to say Toy Toy. So sometimes they call me Mr. Toy Toy.
Okay, Mr. Toy Toy. Thank you so much for joining us here on African Diaries with myself, Nmbuso Mahlangu, as I am standing in for Michelle Ndikumana. And if you also want to catch up on that conversation that we just had right now, you can still go on our website, which is www.channelafrica.co.za. You can still send in your views, your opinions on the conversation that we just had on our WhatsApp line, which is +276 3406 9126, and on our Twitter we are at Channel Africa 1. We'll be back with more after this.
When the sun goes down, we don't stop the talk. Channel Africa, the best nighttime radio. In this episode